I love a genreless life. It's beautiful to watch and appreciate that, but also do it yourself. I make music, I pray with ministers, I sit with everybody you can think of. I'm sitting and observing and trying to learn. Artist just gives me, when I describe myself as an artist, it just gives me an opportunity to do whatever the fuck I want. A creator, artist, the tool I choose to use as my paintbrush is my basketball. I've done it in my backyard since I was 6 years old.
But when you're out there, are you thinking about the shit you're doing, or are you just doing it?
I am constantly crafting new canvases every time I grab that paintbrush, the ball. New canvas, new side on the court. It is literally just a hardwood floor with lines on it, but I disrespect those lines and go outside those boundaries because it's meant to. It's meant to be tweaked.
And it's fun, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. You know, we're gonna start off with a quote, as I always do, to like try to get the gist of what I'm trying to get at. All right, this is a quote from a fantasy book that I'm currently reading called Sailing to Serantium. I think I said it correctly. By Guy Gavriel. All right. He and Crispin had used that concept, in fact, for a row of blessed victims in the long walls of a private chapel in Bayana years ago. It had been only a partial success. At night, by candlelight, the effect was not what Crispin had hoped it would be, but they learned a fair bit, and learning from errors was what mosaic work was all about. All right, so basically, I'm trying to compare mosaic work to the art of basketball when it comes to being creative and being creative on the fly. It takes a lot for you to get to that level when it comes to playing basketball. It takes a lot for you to do all those insane moves that look so effortless, you feel me, and look so pleasing to the eye. It takes a lot to get to that level, but people don't see that. You feel me? Perfect example is people like a.k.a. Stephen Curry, Kyrie Irving. Like a lot of those people who have like crazy crossovers, it didn't just happen overnight unless they was like really gifted, like someone like Jamal Crawford. And even then, he still worked on it a lot. But it came with errors. Like they learned from what they did wrong. They learned from their experiences. And through that is what made their dribble moves and their game of basketball in general elite. It was constant errors and repetition and learning from their mistakes and trying to build something that was basically non-existent in their repertoire and made it into something so uniquely found in how they play the game. That right there is basically what basketball is all about. And that is why I think basketball is the most creative sport in general. I'm not trying to discredit any other sport, you feel me? There's a lot of creativity when it comes to sports like soccer and probably UFC, like MMA. But with basketball, sometimes when the right moves happen at the right time and they're just doing it off instinct, it looks so pleasing and like so effortless that people just gravitate to the form in which they took that move to get the bucket. You feel me? It's so crazy. And I feel like people subconsciously are aware of that, but like not consciously aware of it. They don't really pay mind to how effortless these NBA players do those moves, or how effortless they get to the basket when it comes to pulling out a certain jab step or a certain hezzy or completing a Euro step. You feel me? It's so different to each individual, but it can sometimes, most of the time, oftentimes, execute the same way. The firefighters want to come by at this time. It's 11 in the morning. Whose house burning down right now? With that said, basketball is the most creative sport, as I mentioned before. It's a visual representation of human creativity. You see, when you look at art, when you look at movies, when you look at pictures, when you look at anything that involves a human having to be creative, people disregard sports, specifically basketball. And playing basketball and having a huge sense of creativity in mind could definitely improve your game. It forces you to think critically. Of course, you have to be rational at some points, a lot of points in basketball, when it comes to team formation, when it comes to trying to get a basket and trying to override the defense to trying to get a bucket. But learning to think outside the box when the defense is just overcoming your offense and providing that spark for your team to get over that hump, sometimes it has to come from your ability to think critically. You sometimes have to think about things that nobody else is thinking of. And sometimes that thought process comes out of nowhere. It comes instantly. I always like one of my favorite players to watch, besides Luka, of course, I'm a Dallas fan. But one of my favorite players to watch is Kyrie Irving. Well, he's on Dallas too, but the way he dribbles, the way he creates space for him to score, the way he attacks the basket, the way he makes room for his teammates to shoot because of his offensive threat, it's so satisfying just to watch. Just because he himself, I believe, I could be wrong, but from what I see is like he trains so much on his dribble moves that, of course, it looks so effortless and whatnot, but he got into that point where him thinking out of the box becomes so naturally for him that he is always one step ahead of his defender without necessarily having to think too much on it. And thinking out of the box, thinking critically, is the ability to be one step ahead of your defender in basketball. So Kyrie Irving does that naturally on a daily basis all the time. And it looks so cool. Like, that's why people always say that Kyrie is, if not the most skilled player in the NBA. You got other players like Paul George, like Luka. Those are the main three that I think of right now that's currently in the NBA. I could say Shy. There's many people there, you feel me, that got that. But also, what's crazy about thinking critically too is like, it can go the other way around as well. Like, not in a bad thing, but sometimes people in basketball try to seek to do too much. You feel me? They do too much sometimes. And with players like Jokic, for example, perfect example, is that his game is so simple that in a weird way is kind of thinking outside the box just because people ain't accustomed to how he plays because how advanced the NBA is now. You feel me? He has the body, he has the height. He looks like an average player. But when you play against him, I'm pretty sure a lot of people are stunned as to how he gets all those buckets because it looks so simple. His post game is so simple, but he knows. You feel me? He knows the game of basketball. His IQ is like, it's up there. It's to the top. He's always able to get a step ahead of every defender that he goes up against. Yeah, it came through practice. It came through a lot of errors. What he does on the court, it may not look astonishing. It may not look satisfying. To me, it does. But to the general population who view basketball, who watch NBA, but it's so effortless. And he's always able to get to the basket because of his simple way of playing basketball. People tend to forget that the goal of basketball is to just get more runs than the opposing team. And the way to do that, as simple as this may sound, is getting the ball through the basket more than the opposing team. And that's what Jokic does. Simple as that. You don't have to be creative all the time. You don't have to be skillful all the time. But having that simplicity also is what makes creativity so creative at times too. Simple art can be effortless as well. Simple art can be beautiful. Simple art could hold a lot of value as well. And Jokic represents that in the NBA. Like I said, it's visually pleasing to the eye. I mean, only a select few players you probably look at and you be like, he's not that good. But mostly every player in the NBA is skillful and creative as it is. You have to be in order to be in that league. The skill gap from college or the G League to the NBA, it's crazy different. So a lot of those players are visually pleasing regardless of how they are, regardless of how they play. The things that they do makes people come and watch. You feel me? So that itself explains why basketball to me is so creative and so entertaining to watch. There's like this huge thing going around on Instagram where like they get basketball highlights and put it in slow motion and put some like nice low tempo music but in the background. Those reels, no lie, it has to be one of the most fire reels or TikToks I've ever seen in a while. Just watching people like Paul George in slow motion, crossing somebody up and just pulling up, it's crazy. It's just like, it makes me smile because I compare it to seeing art. Like I said before, I compare it to seeing something beautiful. When people do moves like that and make it look so effortless, it's like, damn, like how is that possible? You could literally call basketball players artists. No lie. I'm really calling basketball players artists. A lot of them. Because, no typical person can do that. Unless you like Jamal Crawford, like I said. Shout out Jamal Crawford and AI, of course. But it's hard to get to that level. But they make it look like they was just born with it. You feel me? It looks so cool and it looks so relaxed. And going back to what I was saying about the mosaic work, my boy Crispin in that book, it took a lot for him to get to where he was at. He produces beautiful mosaic work. I think I'm saying mosaic correctly or incorrectly. I don't know. But it took a lot for him to get there. A lot of trial and error. But he eventually got there. And a lot of people tend to forget that's what builds success. A lot of players do the same thing. A lot of players do Euro steps. A lot of players do hop steps. A lot of players do step backs. A lot of players post up. But the execution for each of those moves, depending on the player, ain't always a success. I'm pretty sure Jokic could do a Euro step. You feel me? I'm pretty sure he could do it. But compared to somebody like James Harden, I'm pretty sure James Harden will succeed more in Euro steps than Jokic. That's what I'm trying to get at. Like, you got to know your game when it comes to playing basketball. And knowing your play style is what makes basketball so amazing and satisfying to watch. I'm not going to want a post player like Jokic or somebody like Tim Duncan doing Euro steps. I'm pretty sure, like I said, they can do it, but why would they do that? That's not their style. And if they can pull it off and make it look effortless and make it look cool and attack the basket and succeed, hats off to them, you feel me? But they don't got to do it. It's not going to work for them 9 times out of 10. I don't know. That's how I'm seeing it, because I'm pretty sure they don't work on those moves. But a player like Ginobili, those Euro steps is going to execute differently. They're going to succeed with it more because they do it more often. And also, they know when to do it and when not to do it. And on top of that, they're so used to doing those moves. I'm just using a Euro step as an example. They're so used to doing that move that they have a higher chance of succeeding in it more. It's crazy because I started watching basketball probably like 2010. Yeah, because that's when I first started playing like NBA 2K10. I played 2K6, 2K7, 2K9. But like the game that I really started playing and really started getting into basketball was 2K10. And since then, it's like I always looked at basketball as like a visual representation of how creative a human can be. That thought oversees a lot of people's mind because, like I said before, they don't think about all the trials and errors a basketball player went through in order to make their moves look so effortless. But it's crazy. It's crazy analyzing the process of how each player is able to get to the basket or create their own space to get a shot. Basketball players to me are like painters. You feel me? Like watching basketball highlights is like going to a museum and seeing all the different kinds of art that made art what it is today. All the different arts that completed the artist's work that is respected today and that inspired the artist to become who he is or who she is today. Y'all see what I'm trying to get at? Basketball is beautiful. It's creative. It's astonishing. It's satisfying. It's pleasing. But in order to do that, in order to get to that level, you have to be able to think critically as well. In order to be creative, you have to be able to think outside the box and on the fly as well. And going back to what I said earlier, Kyrie Irving is the prime example of the most creative basketball player in the NBA right now. And in my opinion, all time. Compared to any other sport, there's nothing more satisfying than to watch a player like Kyrie pull up to the three-point line, hit his defender with a couple dribbles, with a couple hezzies, with a couple crossovers, you feel me, and get to the basket and stay in the air when he goes up for a layup with all the airtime that he has and switches from left to right, depending on where his defender jumped from, and just rolling that basketball off the backboard and just going right through the basket. It's crazy. Kyrie Irving everybody in the NBA is creative in their own way, like I mentioned earlier, but Kyrie Irving to me is like his capacity to be creative in basketball on the court. It's like up here compared to everybody else, which is like everybody's like right here. But yeah, with that said, tune into the kid, Mike Valentine, a.k.a. Trigger Mike, the one and only. Y'all heard it here first. All right, y'all be easy, stay safe, stay beautiful, stay wavy, stay sexy. All right, and stay safe. I think I said that already. But all right, y'all have a nice one. Peace.